just tweeted a picture from 20 years ago, saying it was from today's fires in the Amazon, and calling the Amazon our house, which we interpreted as being an interference with our sovereignty, and then the thing started from there. So first of all, the Amazon is not burning at all. We had fires this year, a little bit more than last year, but a little bit below average for the last 20 years. We're fighting the fires. Some of them are already being extinguished with some international cooperation, but basically through national efforts. And so that's, I think the discussion started from false premises, the premise that we have an unprecedented crisis of fires this year, which is not true.
Well, okay, so you didn't actually answer the question that I first asked, but let us go now into what you've just said. You're telling the world that there's nothing new, that these fires are, as you said, fairly normal according to the last 20-year average. But you know very well that over the last 10 years or so, there have been determined efforts by the previous government to stop these fires and to stop what leads to them. And that the fires right now are much, much worse than over the last 10 years. It's up 85%, the number of fires, over the last year alone. So don't we have to actually stick with the facts? And I want to ask you whether you think that there is a crisis, given that the fires are raging much, much higher, and as I said, 85% higher than this time last year. Can you just answer that question?
Yes, of course. So, as I said, it's higher. I have said it's higher than last year, but it's a bit, more or less half what it was in the years 2003, 2004, 2005. So, a period where the then government was supposed to be fighting deforestation, and it wasn't. This is the first year that we do this concerted effort with 40,000 people from armed forces and other agencies in the Amazon fighting the fires. The fires are part natural. They occur every year, whatever you do, because of the season, the dry season. And in part, they are made by people. In this case, in many cases, they are criminal or trying to find the culprits. And there were even people who were coordinating in the WhatsApp to put fires into the forest in order to make the government look bad. So that's the kind of people we're facing. But we are doing whatever we can to find the cases where there's environmental crime being committed and to find it.
You know, the president was blaming international NGOs. Do you believe that yourself? I mean, are you continuing to blame international NGOs for these fires?
No, we don't blame international NGOs. In some cases, the NGOs, environmental NGOs that are in Brazil are great. In other cases, we don't know what they do, what their aims are. But we're not blaming the fires on them. We're blaming the fires. I mean, we're not blaming. I mean, we're just saying the fires are partly natural, part come from criminal activity that should be prosecuted.
Okay, so let's get down to what the criminal activity would be. I mean, the broader issue, isn't it, is whether you, as the government of Brazil, believe that the Amazon rainforest, you might not like to hear this, but is the public good, is yours, is the neighboring countries, but is also the world's carbon sinkhole. It is the world's lungs. It is the home of so many species and biodiversity that if extinguished, will be irreplaceable. So I want to know whether you, the Brazilian government, agrees that this is something not just for your own country people, which you do obviously have to address, but it is a huge public good in the public domain.
Yes, well, first of all, we think that the part of the Amazon that is inside Brazilian territory, we have the means to take care of it, and we recognize its importance, like that of ecosystems around the world. In terms of carbon, Brazil is responsible for more or less 3%, less than 3% of CO2 emissions worldwide, and basically 2/3 of that come from deforestation. So we're talking about no more than 2% of worldwide CO2 emissions that may come from the Amazon. Their part comes from even other parts, other ecosystems in Brazil. So I mean, those are the figures. There's a lot of rhetoric on that, all these expressions of the lungs of the world, etc. But I think we have to look at the science, and that's what the science shows.
Well, here's the thing about the science. There does seem to be a massive assault by your government on the actual science. So let's just get this clear, and I'd like you to respond. First of all, 60% of the Amazon forest is in Brazil. Yes, there's the rest of it in your neighboring countries, but 60% is in your country. And as you know, science has said that what happens to the Amazon absolutely determines the pace and direction of climate change and global warming, etc. Now, your president has cut the Environmental Enforcement Agency severely, about $23 billion, according to official data by the Observatorio do Clima. You talked about punishing criminals. However, the punishment of environmental criminals has declined substantially on the watch of President Jair Bolsonaro, again, according to the Environment and Renewable Natural Resources. And last month, the president fired the director of your National Space and Research Institute. He says he was fired after defending satellite data. Now, this is technical data which showed deforestation was, as I said, more than 85% higher than it had been the last year. I mean, how is that even possible in our technological world?
Yes, it's possible because he lied. The data he showed in June, for deforestation in June this year, was actually the collection of all deforestation since a little bit 1 year ago. And it was presented as being all this month of June. So this was a huge distortion of the scientific data, and it was presented to the public. Of course, the public didn't have the access to the data, to the satellite data.